etc., etc. Unfortunately, the world of jazz education and the world of music academia in general has actually held us back from our pursuit of becoming the jazz musician that we really want to become. So in this video, I want you and I to really question some of the things that we've been forced to believe, things that we've been taught to believe, and actually ask ourselves, well, firstly, how many of these things are even true? And then secondly, did the great jazz musicians that we love actually believe in these things? Because I believe that there are certain things that these jazz legends actually knew. And by jazz legends, I'm talking about the Charlie Parkers of this world. I'm talking about the Bud Powells. I'm talking about John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk, Dizzy Gillespie. I'm talking about Lester Young, Coleman Hawkins. I'm talking about Herbie Hancock. Feel free to add in the comments any other legends that come to mind, right? So all these guys that we admire, what did they really believe about jazz? What did they actually know about jazz? And what did they actually focus on? Because maybe if you and I spend a bit of time to think about that, that might help us better to pursue the musician that we really want to become. So if we can get some insight into what they believed and what they thought, that could help us in our own journey. So let's go through some of the things that I believe that these guys really believed. And again, by the end of the video, if some other thoughts come to your mind and you're like, hang on, I think they also believe this, please feel free to drop that in the comments, because the whole point of these videos that I make is for us to share information and, most importantly, to learn together. If I can take you from the musician that you are to the musician that you want to be, and even vice versa, then we're both helping each other in a very positive way, and that's really my intent. So here's the first thing that I believe. I believe that the great jazz legends believed that improvisation is composition. So when you're improvising, you are composing things. The only difference maybe between their approach and, let's say, for instance, a classical approach is, well, the classical musician might take time to put this composition together, whereas the jazz musician is composing right now. Now, if it is true that improvisation is composition, then should we not be spending time learning the same tools that a composer actually possesses? So what does a composer do? I mean, the composer knows their harmony, so they know their chords. And here are some of the basic jazz chords, actually. And feel free to try these on your instrument. So I'm just going to demonstrate these. Let's see. Let's do them in the key of A. I'm actually picking a key that might force you to practice, because maybe you don't use it as often. All right, so most people might know an A major triad, but as a composer needs to know, okay, that's my major triad, that's my minor. But in jazz, we're often using extensions of chords. So you want to know that this is A major 7. Why? Because it's got the root, the third, the fifth, and the seventh, right? In fact, if we rewind, if we take a step back, well, they have to know the A major scale, right? So those are that's the pool of notes that they're going to draw from, right? If they're in the key of A, for instance. So we've said A major 7, but composers also know that, well, that's an A7 or an A dominant 7. They also know that that's an A minor 7. They know that this chord here is an A minor 7 flat 5. They even know that that chord right there is an A minor major 7. They know that that is an A diminished. Okay, so composers know their chords. Now, if you want to become a good improviser, it is going to be wise to spend quite a bit of time learning not just your chords, but learning how to play this chord in different inversions. Hi there. By you watching this video, I'm guessing you either love jazz and you want to know how to play it on your instrument, or there's something that you're struggling with on your musical journey and you're looking for a solution. If that's the case, I would like to invite you to the Jazz Breakthrough Challenge. This is a 5-day live coaching experience with myself that's all done on Zoom. By the end of the challenge, you'll have real clarity on what to practice and how to practice. You will have a very clear roadmap on how to become the jazz musician you've always dreamed of becoming. If this sounds great to you, I want you to join the next Jazz Breakthrough Challenge. So scan the QR code or click the link in the description. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Now let's jump back into the video. So you might want to play your A major 7 like this. You've got to know that you can also play it in first inversion and second inversion and even third inversion, right? Because by knowing things like this, this is how people end up making lines like this was just an inversion. So I started my line by actually playing an inversion. So I can do that because I know the compositional tools. So I know how to play inversions. That's a melodic line right there. So that's an inversion. Okay, so basically you have to know all your chords. You've got to know their inversions. You need to be able to play the inversions in broken, or rather in arpeggios, so that you can start making up your own lines. Okay, you need to be able to play these in different order. So for instance, instead of just always going up, you want to know how to go down. You want to be able to swap notes around. So I might go, okay, so I swapped the last two notes around there. I might even go, that's a different way of playing the same thing. So these are all different ways of playing the same core idea, which is a chord, playing it as an inversion, but I've got multiple ways of approaching that. And as a composer, all these are tools that are in your box, and you can always take them out to build whatever you want to build. Okay, so you can start building lines because you've got that. So you've got the chords, you've got the inversions, and then obviously you're going to start putting the chords together. So one chord to another chord to another chord. So for instance, if I'm in the key of A, as a composer, I've got to know that that's chord 2, I need to know that's chord 5, and then there's chord 1. But again, if I've practiced my inversion, okay, so what was I doing there? I probably can't photocopy what I just did there exactly, but the general idea of it was I was playing my chords, my chord tones rather, in inversions. So I played the top note of my 2 chord because I know my inversions. I know that, I know that. That's my 5 chord in third inversion. And that's my 1 chord in, what's the second inversion? Okay, so improvisation is composing, and if you really want to become good at improvising, if you would really want to become good at playing jazz, what you really need are the compositional tools. And I've already mentioned chords, I mentioned chord progressions, and then you want to know how songs are actually put together, so that, let's say you're playing something like, I don't know, Misty, for instance. You need to know that the song starts on chord 1. Okay, I'm playing in the key of A, and some people will be like, whoa, I thought that was in the key of E flat. Well, the jazz greats also knew that a song is not in one single key. A song is put together this way, and therefore we can play it in any key of our choice, actually. So I'm going to take Misty and play it in the key of A, right? I don't even think I've ever done this before, actually playing Misty in the key of A, which is why I had to fish for those melody notes in the beginning. But what I do know is that it starts on chord 1. And then I know that there's a 2-5 that's going to take us to chord 4. So we want to go to chord 4. Okay, so if I play a 2-5 of chord 4, That's what that looks like. So da da da, chord 1, and here's the 2/5 of chord 4. Da 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 dee, da 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 da. And here are my inversions, right? Let me play that beginning again. Da da da. Okay, so you need to be able to know exactly how songs are put together. You need to know the compositional tools. That's something that great improvisers and great jazz players knew, because it's not uncommon. In fact, I found this quite a lot, that there are a number of people who play the same song but in different keys. So they just had the ability, well, that's putting it simply, they didn't just have the ability to do it. I believe they intentionally worked on it for a period of time until they came to realize that, hang on, a key is just a key. There's 12 of them, and I can actually take this song and play it in any key. By doing that, that helps you to start seeing things in common, like among songs. And then once you know the things that put songs together, the similar things that put songs together, that's going to enable you to be more fluent as a player. Right? And you realize that, hang on, that thing that I played in Misty over there, this 2 going to 5 and then going to chord 4. Is that not the same thing maybe that I might play in a song like, let's see, do we have this in There'll Never Be Another You? I know it goes to the 2/5 of chord 6. There's the 2/5 of chord 4. Okay, so I can already see things in common between Misty and There'll Never Be Another You, right? And I'm playing both in the key of A, of which both are not probably originally written in those keys, but hopefully that makes the point. Okay, so that's the very first thing about the jazz legends, is that they understood that jazz is really composing in the moment, and therefore they worked on compositional tools. By that I also mean a composer knows how to create melodies, right? So let me stay in the key of A for a little bit. So maybe Mozart came up with that melody, you know. In fact, what is that melody? That's just an arpeggio, right? Mozart actually knew his inversions. That's why he composed all this beautiful stuff, right? When he was playing, that's a chord. But he knew that he could invent his own melodies using these tools. So he had to know his chords in order to create these melodies. And likewise, jazz musicians, we have all these compositional tools, such as, let me use motivic development. So let's say I play something like, okay, so that's a 3-note motive right there. All right, I could take that around. In fact, I'm even hearing a song like My Romance. Those are the notes, right? But let's say I play these. Let me play a 2/5/1 in the key of A. So here I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And here's my motive. Okay, so what am I doing? I've taken my one idea, I've moved it around, and I'm playing it in different places. Sometimes I'm altering the rhythm, but it's basically a compositional tool. You find this in all sorts of music, whether it's classical or whatever. If Mozart plays, he's probably going to play. That's the motive. And then that's being playful. So he composed that. Who knows how long that took? It might have taken a short time. This was Mozart. one of, in my opinion, the first jazz musicians. Okay, maybe not the first, but definitely one of the best ever. Okay, why am I calling him a jazz musician? Because he used to improvise. He could compose over time, but he could also compose in the moment and just blow your mind. Okay, and we basically want to learn the same tools that he learned so that we can play them in real time. So, to cut the long story short, what's the first thing jazz legends knew is that jazz is composing. So if you want to become a good jazz musician, then learn compositional tools, and that is going to go a long way. I actually have a resource that gives you some of these compositional tools, and it's called the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course. Okay, I'm going to put the link in the description so that you can check it out. But if you want to learn chords, chord inversions, harmonic formula, how songs are put together, okay, inversions, and all that stuff, very common chord progressions in jazz, you find those in the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course, and you can work with this at your own pace. So please check that out in the description. You will not regret getting that. That's going to give you all the compositional tools that you need to become a solid jazz musician. Well, another thing that the jazz legends knew is that not every idea has to be completely original. And not every idea has to fall from heaven in order for it to be meaningful, you know. So when you listen to any of them, right, you're going to hear things, like, definitely that they've heard before, or that you've heard them do before. And you're like, hang on, I know that's got to be Thelonious Monk, because I'm hearing him play that whole tone pattern, you know. Maybe it's over a dominant chord or something, you know. So they do these things. These are ideas that they've probably practiced before, they've worked on them before, and now they can apply them in all sorts of situations. Not uncommon to hear Charlie Parker say, this little thing here, and he might change it slightly each time, but you can tell that that's in his bag. It's definitely part of his bag of tricks. You know, he knows that when I'm playing a 2 chord or a minor chord, I could always play. So he might be playing a blues, right? Here it comes. So that's just a very Charlie Parker kind of thing to do. Yeah. So not every idea has to be completely new or completely original. Sometimes you're going to work on certain things. You could hear Oscar Peterson going, you know. So not everything has to be completely new. Unfortunately, sometimes books and things, education just tells us, you've got to learn something new. You've got to learn something new. You've got to learn something new. But you know what? Not all the time. Sometimes what you actually want is to build vocabulary. Just like how in this video, I'm not inventing new English words. I'm using words that I've already learned, words that I've used before. But what am I doing? I'm actually telling a story. I'm actually explaining a point using existing vocabulary, which actually brings me to another point about something that these jazz legends knew. They knew that the whole point of all this is to communicate, right? So improvisation is not just about, I'm coming up with new original ideas. It's actually about me putting my thoughts, my feelings, my emotions across to the listener. And that's the most important thing. Unfortunately, these days, we tend to believe that, if someone can play some really flashy stuff, in fact, we even believe this about ourselves, right? Like, if I learn some cool runs, then everyone's going to think I'm amazing. But I think by thinking like that, we've probably missed the point. It's not really about people thinking we're cool. It's really about us simply expressing our ideas. Sometimes the ideas are just simple, you know. Sometimes it could be one note. I love how Duke Ellington with mostly one note expressed his idea. One note. But I love that, So one note, not a whole bunch of craziness, can actually express an idea. So you could be improvising. Let me play something over, something that we probably all know and love. Let's play a little bit of Autumn Leaves. I'm going to stick to one idea and just express whatever ideas I've got right now, right? So I think, well, first of all, I like what I did there. Why? Because it was simple, easy to follow, hopefully easy for you to understand, and actually easy for me to develop. Because one note with some rest in between gives me the time to remember what I've just done and then quickly decide what to do next. Okay, so if I played dee, I can say, okay, am I going to play the same note or the same rhythm, or am I going to move this around? Okay, so that way, I believe by doing that, you actually make more meaningful sentences, more meaningful musical phrases, ultimately more meaningful music. Okay, so that's another thing that the legends just knew, that the whole point of all this is communication. Me presenting my thoughts across to you, and you comprehending them first of all, and then ultimately just enjoying them because you actually understand what I'm doing. That's way better, in my opinion, than just running up and down and showing people how amazing you are. You know what we call those people that just want us to know that they're amazing? Usually annoying. Okay, first of all, we don't even think they're amazing, although they are in a way, but just because of the attitude and the way it's coming across, we're like, ugh, that's a bit repelling. Okay, so let's go to another thing that these jazz legends knew, which I think we could learn from. Right, so one thing is that it takes time to get good. So we're often in a hurry, aren't we, to get to there. I want to go there. But not only do I want to go there, I want to go there now. So everyone is looking for a shortcut, when people come to me for lessons, they're like, show me something cool, show me something that's just going to make people make faces like, ooh, ee, ah. Okay. But actually, I think a lot of the time they've missed the point, because it really takes time to get good. You cannot microwave this whole jazz thing, and sometimes, I'm even one of the people that coaches people over a period of time. So I'll say maybe in 90 days. Sometimes I'll say, come, let's do this thing in 5 days. But hopefully that's not misleading, because I hope you're not thinking that 5 days later you're going to become a jazz legend, or 90 days later. But in those days, you can get very good information that if you continue working on over time is actually going to turn you into the jazz musician that you want to become. So you can actually get there, but this can only happen gradually, not like that. Okay, so you have to learn those chords. You have to learn these chord progressions. You have to learn all these tunes, You have to learn all those inversions before you get there. Okay, you have to learn all these compositional devices for creating melodies. You want to know how to embellish the original melody, and then you want to create your own melodies and embellish those melodies and develop them. Okay, and that takes time. Another misleading thing is to think, ooh, but hang on, Clifford Brown died when he was 22 or something, and he was already playing that, so this stuff can all happen now. But I mean, do we know how long he was playing? Do we know how long he practiced? Do we know how much music, what was his musical environment actually? Because maybe his parents were playing music around the house. Were his parents musicians? We don't know. Charlie Parker, we know he practiced 15 hours a day for a period of 4 years or something like that. Are you doing that? We're even thinking Hendrix, although not a jazz man, like how did he get that good? So sometimes we think things happen quickly, but sometimes we forget the sacrifice that those people who could play well at such a young age had to make in order for that to happen. Right, so unless you've got those 15 hours a day like Bird, then just understand that, you might have to play for 20 years or for 30 or for however long it takes to actually get good. And I think a healthy mindset is also not to be so obsessed with the destination, but be obsessed with the journey. So if today is better, in fact, let me rephrase that. If today is even slightly better than yesterday, then we're moving in the right direction. Okay. So jazz musicians knew that, and were therefore patient with themselves. So you just trust in the process that, if I keep working on these fundamentals, if I'm faithful with the small stuff, it's eventually going to add up and make me the musician that I actually want to become. Jazz legends also knew that as much as I want to get there, this place that we call there tends to actually shift, over time. So sometimes I think of people like Chick Corea. At some point, his there was Horace Silver. If I can just play like Horace Silver, then I am there. In fact, I heard him say at some point that he replaced Horace in his own band. So like Chick Corea's band was actually Horace Silver's band, and he was now playing with Junior Cook and Blue Mitchell and all those guys. So that was his goal. And then it shifted. It's like, okay, now that I can do this, I really want to play like Bud Powell, So his there shifted, now it's over there. And then he started pursuing that. He comes across McCoy Tyner. Actually, you know what? McCoy, let me try some of this. And then realizes Bill Evans is like, okay, I'm changing direction. This is where I'm going. And you know what? That's all okay. And that's part of you finding yourself, finding your musical voice, and actually finding the things that you like. So some things that you like today, or you might not necessarily like them in the next 10 years. Or you might not be as passionate about them as you were. But as long as you're moving towards a certain destination, all those things become part of who you actually are. So don't worry so much about getting there, because there is going to shift over time. I bet you if Parker had been alive for longer, he might have started changing direction, just like what Miles Davis did. I've got a record of Dizzy Gillespie playing maybe what we might even call fusion. You can hear electric keyboards. You're hearing, I think there's probably drum machine there, and it's just grooving over simple chords. It wasn't bebop anymore. So there shifts over time and your interests change. So we could actually benefit a lot from that, because again, it comes back to the point, rather obsess with the journey, not the destination, because the destination is going to keep changing as you get better. This one here is quite important to me, because it's one of the mistakes that I made early in my life. And who told me this? I guess school, I guess books, I guess society. I might have even told myself this, but you don't have to know everything, and you certainly don't need to master everything. So if I think of Bud Powell, maybe all he had to learn was really bebop. That was his thing. Man, that's what he focused on. Monk focused on rhythm. He could play rhythm like no one else, you know. He wasn't worried about playing like Art Tatum. No. And yet, what do we find ourselves doing? I have to learn the blues. I have to learn all the standards, and I have to learn them in all keys. I have to learn how to swing, but I also need to know how to play like straight Afro-Cuban music as well, you know. But I also need to know how to play in 3/4 and in 5/4 and in 7/8, you know. I have to learn how to play the bossa nova, and I have to learn how to play the chord changes. But then I also have to learn how to play outside the chord changes. Ooh, I have to learn how to play avant-garde. I have to learn how to play stride. You know, I need the rootless voicings, but I also need to play walking bass. So can you see how many things maybe we, but also even education and society imposes upon us? By society, I just mean like your jazz community gives you this idea, because maybe you see someone who's good at a lot of things, and then you think that you have to be good at everything too. That's not necessarily true. The jazz legends knew that, hang on, like Lester Young, for instance, he just knew, man, if I can swing and play beautiful melodies, man, that's really the most important thing. You know, if I can play with this beautiful sound and continuously come up with this really cool version of the song myself, then that's really what matters. I've heard Thelonious Monk play a solo where the only thing that he's doing is playing the melody, but he's playing it in so many different ways. So sometimes he approaches it this way, and sometimes it drops from the ceiling, sometimes it comes from underground. So he's just approaching the melody in all sorts of unexpected ways. And man, that's his thing, you know. He didn't have to play salsas, you know, or odd time signatures. Just find your thing and become good at it, and that's what people will love you for, and hopefully that's what you're also remembered for. That's why people will hire you. The final thing that I want to share about the jazz legends is they believe that you don't have to be the best. You just have to be yourself. And I think comparison is like a poison. It really just poisons your creativity. So there'll always be faster musicians than yourself. There'll always be more knowledgeable musicians than yourself. There'll always be more experienced musicians. So important thing to remember is that even though there are all these other guys who are better, there is only one person in the entire world who can sound like you. So embrace your individuality, embrace your uniqueness, because that's really what the world wants to hear. Okay, and actually it's the entire point, you know, for you to sound like yourself and not like anyone else. So we've covered, or rather we've discussed all these things, these sets of beliefs that our jazz legends have. Now, how can we use that to make us better? I believe that jazz, improving in jazz is really mostly about your mindset. And if we can adopt or begin to adopt these principles one by one and these sets of beliefs, if you just tell yourself, hang on, I just have to be myself. Hang on a second, I don't have to know everything. I don't have to be a master of everything. If you just tell yourself, actually, you know what, I just need to learn how to compose in real time. You know, so just one principle at a time, I think, is going to take you closer and closer to your ultimate goal. So I'd really encourage you to take that seriously and just, out of all these principles, just pick one and get going with it, and then see where that takes you. So speaking of composing and speaking of building a firm foundation, please don't forget to check out the Jazz Piano Fundamentals course. You can work at this on your own pace, at your own pace rather, and you've got access to it forever. So I'm putting a link in the description, so please check that out, and like I said earlier, you won't regret it. Now, I'm sure most people are subscribed to the channel already, but if you're not, just in case, please hit that subscribe button to help spread this gospel of jazz piano education to the world. The more of us improving, the better, you know. In fact, I believe that music can actually make the world a better place. So let's make more people aware of this. And don't forget my 5-day 5-day program that will be coming soon. Okay, just sign up for that, and I will get back to you with the necessary information. Right, if you've got any questions about anything music related, let's ask those questions in the comments, and feel free to respond to each other's comments with a lot of positivity. Again, that's very important. You know, we need more and more of that in the world. So let's all encourage each other to just get better and better and better and better. And that's really the goal. Okay, if you like what you've seen or heard, please give this a thumbs up, share it with someone else, and just continue working on your craft. And I hope to see you in the next video.